Hey everybody, I'm Mark, and today I wanted to put together a video to show you a cool project that I'm doing that I'm really excited about. I've been wanting to do this for a couple years now, and finally I've got the opportunity and the time to take care of it. So this video is basically going to be about how you can take very poor ground, very poor soil, and rejuvenate it back into something awesome, just with a little bit of time and with wood chips. Now I'll explain the process of how that all works. But first, I think I'm going to explain specifically what my situation is here. That way it kind of puts things into perspective a little bit better. So this is a field that's in the middle of our farm, and you can see there's my vegetable garden right behind it. It's right adjacent to that. And it's a very nice field. It's right in the middle of the farm. Like I said, it's got a south-facing slope, and it gets plenty of sunshine and good airflow, as you can see at the top of the hill here. So it's got all the right things going for it in terms of being a fantastic place to grow things. The problem is it's got terrible soil. You can see the soil down here. And in some areas, it won't even grow weeds or grass. Like in July and August, if you come out here, there'll literally be like basketball size, beach ball size areas where not a single little tiny plant will grow because of how poor the soil is. It's basically like concrete. And the way that it got that way was, well, number one, this farm has been a farm for hundreds of years now, and it's seen all the different, I guess, farming techniques and abuses that come with it over the years, which have stripped a lot of the native topsoil out of here. But more importantly, within recent years, what really did this ground in was this whole area used to be what's known as a mum field in the nursery industry. And a mum field is a piece of land that you have outside that's typically covered with black woven plastic ground cloth. And what it does is it doesn't allow grass or weeds or anything to grow up through it, obviously. That way you can grow potted plants on the surface and not have to go around with a weed whacker around each plant, so on and so forth. But the problem with a mum field, especially one like that, and especially one like that on a hill slope, is that over the years, every time it rains, water gets underneath that cloth and it just rides right along the top of the surface. And when it runs off, it's got nothing to hold that soil in place anymore, right? Because all of your weeds and your grass roots and all that, it's gone. They're not there anymore, and that's what you wanted for your mum field. But the cost is every time it rains, especially a big rain, and as I said, especially on a hill like this, that water is going to flow downhill, and it's going to take a lot of your topsoil with it. And that is certainly the case here. And that mum cloth has not been here for about a decade now, and you can see it still has not really, it's still really suffering a lot. There's still these big patches here where you can't grow a single thing. And it's essentially like concrete. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to bring it back to life. I'm going to try to rejuvenate the soil. And the way I'm going to do that is with wood chips, a whole lot of wood chips. As you can see, I've started on laying them out here with the front end loader. And I'm making some good progress. You can see the piles are still mounded. They're not smoothed out yet. That's going to happen later once the wood chips start to thaw. These big chunks like this, I don't know if you can see, these big chunks like this are like that because they're just frozen solid. But once they thaw, it's going to make it a lot easier, or at least possible, for me to come in and smooth all this out. The reason why I'm doing them so thick like this is because they will break down over time. They'll break down a lot more than you would think. In the long run, I want to have about a good 6 inches of quality topsoil that this leaves behind when it's all pretty much all said and done, rotting away. And I've got time on my side. I've got the garden back here. I'm not anticipating growing anything here. I don't need the ground right away. I'm not going to need it for several years. I've got all I can manage inside of that fence right there for the time being. But, down the road, something's eventually going to come around that I'm going to want to grow out here. And by that time, the soil should be really good for it. So I piled them up high. I just don't really like doing things twice. The way this all works essentially is, think of it as like a giant sponge, like a big wet sponge. That's pretty much what this is. It's going to hold on to rainwater as it falls, and then it's just going to hold that moisture, and it's going to sit there on top of the ground and slowly allow that water to seep into the soil over time. Whereas right now, even though this mum cloth hasn't been here for a decade, it's still just, the rainwater just sheets right off of it. There's nothing really stopping it or slowing it down. And that's a big principle when it comes to rejuvenating soil, is just getting water to kind of spread and sink. As you know, anything that you introduce water to, if water starts getting through it somehow, just about anything will break down over time. And the ground is certainly no different. So the first step that's taking place here in this whole process is making the ground softer and just getting it to the point where it will accept water again. And you can see, kind of case in point behind me right here, we'll look at the actual mulch pile itself, or the wood chip pile itself. This whole area is where I've been taking my wood chips from. What you see behind me here has all come from this pile. And I've taken just scoops out of each side all the way along the front here. But I want you to pay attention to the left side versus the right side. The right side is where this pile began. That's where we started dumping in the first place. And the wood chips that were over here had been here for about, let's say, about a year and a half, maybe 2 years now. And you can see that the tractor has left these huge ruts because that ground is now soft. Those wood chips have sat there for a year and a half, and they've made the ground soft enough where I was getting the tractor stuck quite often. In fact, a few times I actually had to use the bucket to kind of walk myself back out of here. But over here, this side of the wood chip pile has only been here for a matter of a few months. And you can see the ground underneath of it is still hard, and I didn't leave any ruts at all. So it doesn't take a long time for the ground to turn soft again. And once that happens, then earthworms and all your little creepy crawlies and all your different microorganisms can really start to infiltrate and do their job with moving things around. I don't think there's any earthworms in here right now because the pile was so hot last night when I was doing this that I think it was too hot for any kind of worms, and now it's too cold. But in the springtime, this is going to have quite a bit of worm activity in here for sure. If you ever think of, like, have you ever seen, like, in a neighborhood setting or in some kind of development where you see tree service companies come in and they'll take down a tree and they'll leave behind the stump, in a lot of cases, with a big pile of mulch on top of it, probably about, 2 of these buckets maybe. And they'll do that to rot the stump out. And what you'll see is, over time, like, if you can resist the urge to use that mulch, to use those wood chips for whatever kind of random gardening chore that, you know, if you could just leave them be for a number of years, you come back 3-4 years later and you dig into that pile, you're going to notice it's like black gold on the inside. I mean, it's like spongy, it's full of moisture, earthworms, centipedes, all kinds of life will be underneath of that pile. And this is just the same exact concept, just on a much larger scale. So wood chips are great. They're going to reconvert the soil back into something that's really, really nice. It'll take about, I'm thinking, 3 years before a layer this thick will break down to the point where I can start planting stuff into the ground again. And even with that, it would have to be specific certain things. Like I would think 3 years from now, blueberries would do fantastic out here because blueberries just love that acidic kind of peaty, very dense and organic matter type of soil, that wood chippy kind of stuff, sawdusty kind of stuff. So they would thrive here, but we already have a half acre of blueberries. So I'm not entirely sure what I would plant here. I don't have a plan established in place yet for that far down the road, but what I will do in the meantime with this while it's here is I'm going to use it as a mum field again. I'll just use it to put potted plants on of whatever kind. And it'll just be a nice, large, usable space where I'm not going to have to deal with weeds and grass and all that kind of stuff. So the best part about all this, guys, is that it's free. I didn't have to use a truck. If you don't own a truck, you can do this. All you really need is a telephone and a wheelbarrow, or if you can rent or borrow, like if you want to do it on a large scale and you want to rent or borrow a front end loader, then that certainly will get you the ability to do something like this. But this was all free. This whole wood chip pile, all I did was I got on the phone and I called a couple local tree service people, and I said, "Are you looking for a place to dump your chips?" And one of them called me back. His name is Pete, just a local tree service guy right down the road, and he's got like 3 trucks. And this is all just from him over the past year and a half, 2 years about, is sometimes I'll say, this isn't even all of his chips that he generates from his business, but sometimes he's working on this side of town and it's just more convenient for him to dump here instead of where he usually would. In fact, he told me that at some places where he dumps, like at the county yard waste center, they'll actually charge him to unload. So this is like an extra bonus for him because it's free, it's closer, and it's just easy to get in and out of. He doesn't have to worry about it. He's got access to the gate and all that, so it just works for him. So if you see somebody that's getting a tree cut down, if you don't want a pile this large, I mean, this is a massive, huge mountain. I mean, I'll walk you around. You can see the size of this. If you don't have the space to take on something like this, then one thing you can do is just watch in your neighborhood for when people are having trees cut down and approach the company, and just be careful because they obviously have chainsaws working and whatnot, but just approach them and talk to them and say, "Hey, you know, I live right down the street. Would you like to dump your wood chips at my place?" And 9 times out of 10, they'll be excited about it. They'll say, "Oh, you know, hell yeah," because you know, you've just potentially shaved 45 minutes off the end of their day, where typically they'd have to drive to God knows where to unload. So it works for them, it works for you, it works for the environment. It's a win-win situation for everybody, and I just think it's a tremendous resource that not enough people really know about or embrace. So that's one thing that I'm going to use this pile for, is this field right here. We've got a few other projects around the farm that we're going to use them for. I mean, I could go on and on and on about the many benefits of wood chips, to making paths, to areas for different landscaping purposes. If you want to construct a new garden somewhere eventually down the road, then this is a good way to, even if you don't have terrible soil, you can just lay it out and define where your garden is going to be years from now. They're great for that, especially in like a woodland setting. I personally like the look of natural wood chips better in a woodland setting than like double shred mulch or black mulch or something like that. But then even to mulch your existing garden spaces, you just have to be careful with pH. That's one thing that I would say to keep an eye on, is your pH. You might want to raise it up a little bit with some lime. Be careful, because the fresh wood chips tend to lean on the acidic side quite a bit, but some plants love that. I mentioned before blueberries, they love a more acidic environment. Hollies, azaleas, rhododendrons, those are all things that will thrive with a nice thick blanket of wood chips. And when I say hollies, that's specifically another project that we've got in line. We planted all those hollies out in the front pasture last year. Yeah, they got planted last year. If you haven't seen that video, that was they're 30-year-old trees that we used a truck with a tree spade on the back of it to move them out into where they are now. So they're going to really benefit from a nice, thick, healthy layer of these wood chips as I can get to it this winter, to just kind of cover up the soil with that. That's going to help hold in moisture. It's going to help them establish very nicely, and then continue to break down and supply nutrients down the road. So lots of uses for wood chips. I just thought that this particular project was one I wanted to share with you guys because I was so excited about it. But anyway, that's my video for today. If you guys are new to the channel, or if you haven't seen any of my other videos, please check them out. It's pretty much all about gardening. This is my farm. This is where I live. And behind me, you can see there's my vegetable garden. It's a half-acre vegetable garden. And that's kind of like the meat and potatoes of the channel. That and the nursery that's right down the hill. That's also on the property. I don't want to put the camera right in the sun, but it's right down there behind me. And then you can see there's another greenhouse up there on the hill. So it's videos about the garden and the nursery, and then just kind of farm life living here. So if any of that interests you, please hit the subscribe button or hit the like button or share, all that stuff. It really helps me out a lot. So for now, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you liked it. I'll see you guys next time.